Hello. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice coffee break. My name is Marcelo Leão. I'm an MBA student at INSEAD. After looking at the big picture, next panels will focus on specific sectors. And we'll now have a set of 3 panels to discuss specific competitive advantage of Brazil from various perspectives. As you've seen from previous presentations, Brazil is uniquely positioned in the renewable sector. Given high availability and low cost of wind and solar, in 2023, 93% of Brazil's electricity came from renewable sources, which makes us a global leader worldwide. Questions that arise are, how can Brazil leverage this context to create competitive advantage to several industries? How can it develop further the renewables market and use this to help accelerate other countries' transitions by exporting renewable energy in different forms? Our first panel in this session will address the challenges and opportunities of investing in Brazil's decarbonized future, focusing on further developing a low-carbon electricity sector. For this discussion, I'm happy to call on stage Clarissa, founding partner at Catavento, Marcos Zagonel, Renewable Energy and Carbon Advisory Manager at Schneider Electric Sustainability Business, Raissa Lafranque, Deputy CEO at EDF Renewables, and to moderate, Arthur Ramos, Managing Partner and Director at BCG.
Thank you very much, Marcelo. Thanks a lot. I know it's tough to good coffee break, also very good setting and fresh air outside and enjoying a good springtime here in Paris. So, I think we have a lot of ongoing discussions and the importance of all the renewable potential that Brazil has. I think from Walter's Schalke discussion, presentation, and also the panels before, the importance of looking at the future. Okay, not only be slapping on our back and say, "Oh, Brazil is great," but what can you do to continue the journey or tackling new opportunities and new journeys on that? So I like to start here, and this is an open question for you, for every one of you. What's the potential? What are kind of things we can be using the renewable competitive advantage to materialize business opportunities? So start with Raissa here, okay?
Thank you, Arthur. So first, I'd like to thank you, the organization, for the invite to be here today. So I work for EDF Renewables in Brazil. That is a global leader in the renewables. We are present in more than 20 countries, and we have a total portfolio of more than 12 gigawatts around the world. In Brazil, we are present since 2015, and I have the chance to work for the renewable projects there since the opening of the company in Brazil. I think that the main potential of Brazil is for sure related to the quality of natural resource. So we are a country with abundance of water, solar resource. We have the best spot of wind for a wind generator in the world. And for sure, I think this is the big difference of Brazil. On top of that, I think the last decade, Brazil was able to introduce the local industry of renewables in Brazil. With a system of public auctions and other public policies, including, for example, financing with BNDES for local content. So giving to the investors, especially from outside Brazil, the perspective of 20 years PPAs, minimal demand by year. All these policies together was, I think, a very important part of the success of Brazil in the renewables today. And now, I said before, we are looking for the future and trying to plan this future and understand what are the best opportunities now. I think, in my point of view, knowing the Brazilian market, I believe that now we need to understand that we have for sure an electricity matrix decarbonized already. So 85% of capacity, installed capacity is from renewables. The perspective from 2030 is to maintain this level of decarbonization, but with an important change that it's increase. It will lead, the increase will lead by non-dispatchable renewables. And we needed to make some adjustments in our actual system to benefit in an efficient way from our quality resource. So what I want to mean with that is that we needed to think our reservoirs, I think, in another way, to understand that it's an important way to increase the capacity of wind and solar sources without losing reliability in the system. Other ways is also the batteries. We need to see how to plan our expansion to don't lose in reliability and do not need more thermal plants to compensate this non-dispatchable source. So I think if we are able to think in the future, to anticipate this kind of needs that we will have, we have everything to be a leader in this renewable generation sector.
So continue the trajectory of a clean grid. Okay, Clarissa, moving ahead to review. Okay, what are the key opportunities you see here? What's there to tackle?
So thank you, Arthur, and thank you very much for the opportunity of participating here in the first European edition of the Brazil Climate Summit here in Paris. So I'd like to come back to what Raissa mentioned, because we are already a leader, and this was mentioned before, in clean renewable generation. And most recently, and this was, of course, largely due to the role of the hydropower electricity in Brazil, which has also to be highlighted nowadays and not to be forgotten. But building up on the hydro that we've built over the past years, we've been able, over the last decade, to really start I would say, very meaningful introduction of wind and solar into our renewable power generation. Today, they already represent more than 20% of our power mix. And just a very short information, which is, I would say, very important, because Brazil last year was the second one after China in terms of addition in wind and solar generation capacity. So meaning that we are already delivering our potential also when it comes to the new renewables. But if we look to, I would say, to the mid and long term, then I would like to call your attention to what has already been mentioned, I think, by Arthur in his presentation. It has to do with the role of our advanced and sustainable bioenergy. So we already rely on 24% of our energy mix is relying on bioenergy, compared to 9% globally. So this already puts us in a different position. And why is it so important? Because, of course, we do need biofuels to decarbonize transportation, but we do need biomass to decarbonize our industrial sector, and also contributing to the decarbonization of the power industry. So this puts our biomass in a very unique position because we are considered, according to the IEA, and Cecilia is here, but one of the most important contributor in terms of additions of bioenergy going forward. So Brazil is expected to add 43% of biofuel production over the next 5 years, reaching more than 50 billion barrels. I would say I was going to say barrels of oil because I'm linked to I work a lot with the oil and gas industry, but billions of liters by 2028 compared with slightly 37 today. But this only makes sense if we are able to provide biomass energy sources to the world, if the world buys our biomass. So this means that we must be integrated into global value chains. Otherwise, this potential will not be really, I would say, our clear competitive advantage globally. And if we look even further in the future, I would also like to highlight two other major decarbonized energy streams that are really in front of us. One is CCUS, so the potential that Brazil has to really enhance the carbon technologies, carbon capture and use of technologies in Brazil. We have the potential of capturing and storing between 1 and 3 gigatons of CO2 equivalents in depleted oil and gas fields, and Brazil is a large producer of oil and gas as well. So we already have, and we'll have more depleted oil and gas fields available. But for that, we still need the regulatory framework to advance, and this is, as we speak, what is being discussed in Brazil. So we're able to identify other reservoirs, even onshore, and to advance these decarbonization technology. And the other one, which will be hardly debated in the next session, it has to do with green hydrogen. So I'll only mention here that we do have potential, not yet realized, but so far, as of May, we had just a slightly complementary information to your assessment, Arthur. But Brazil has announced 45 projects of low carbon hydrogen, totaling, according to the MOUs and the public information available, more than $80 billion in investments, approximately 9 million tons of hydrogen announced. Nevertheless, no FIDs yet at scale. So this is about potential, but not yet about, committed investments.
No, very, very important. Announcement is very different from FIDs and putting sticks really in the ground here. But Marco, it's good that also that you see all these investments, and of course we think about funding, but also if you could provide the perspective of the supply chain, our supply chain, particularly supporting that kind of initiatives and investments.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Also a pleasure to be here. Many thanks for the organization. I still see as the biggest opportunity in Brazil for investment the renewables. And one reason for that is because there is a supply chain that was developed over the years to produce locally wind turbines, wind blades, even exporting wind blades to other countries. And Brazil is already a success story of renewables, but I believe there's still much to be done because in my work, I advise many large multinationals, large intensive energy users, and the renewable energy in Brazil that we have today is not good enough for them. If you have large companies that are committed to renewable energy use, they sign up to RE100, for example, and RE100 demands that the power plant is not older than 15 years, for example. So if you have large consumers in Brazil that they want to meet their goals and fulfill the criteria from CDP, RE100, and other organizations, the old hydro, the 50, 60, 80 years old hydro plants will not do. So there's lots of room to invest and to bring new renewable energy to the market, both in solar and wind or other technologies as well, to fill this gap, because the Brazilians are right now finding out also about electric cars. There's still lots of potential to grow the demand for electricity. And I believe we'll have in a few years' time a shortage of renewable electricity that meets this criteria for the large consumers, for the companies that really have this commitment to RE 100 and CDP. Because if you have a commitment to RE 100 also, you cannot go there and say, look, I'm consuming power in Brazil and the matrix is 80% clean. No, you need to have a certificate proving that each and every kilowatt hour you consume is coming from a specific power plant. Because it's not simply about using renewable energy, but also driving change. And then if you use power from Itaipu, you're not driving any change. You need to firm a commitment to bring new capacity to the market, a new wind park, a new solar park, and then for 15 years you can claim this sustainability because of your purchasing energy from a new project, you're driving change, and you're complying with this. So I really see the biggest opportunity remains investing in renewables, and the supply chain is there. So we have in the past a few cycles, but we have many large players from the world established in Brazil producing locally the wind components, and also lots of expertise building the solar plants within Brazil. So the equation is there. What you need is committed buyers and investors to bring this new capacity to the market.
No, great. On the second part, and I think you touched a little bit about the challenge also, okay, to materialize that potential, okay. But I'd like to start with Clarissa on a little bit on the financial side. What's the challenge of financing that transition?
So thank you, Arthur, for bringing up this very important question, and I know that Luciana will provide much more information of what BNDES is doing. But
we'll solve all the requirements.
Yes, but I would say that even though Brazil can count on a very important and meaningful mechanisms that is provided by the National Development Bank, I would say that emerging economies really face challenges in getting access to finance. And we at Catavento, we hosted a roundtable. Cecilia Tam was here from IEA, but other stakeholders as well, to discuss what needs to be done. And the first thing is really to acknowledge what is hindering investment to reach, I would say, good projects in emerging economies. And the first item is the high cost of capital. And this is, of course, especially now that we are living into increased interest rates worldwide, the high cost of capital is really hindering investments in emerging economies. If we look to the full pack of emerging economies, we only, I would say, gathered 270 billion of clean investment back in 2022, which means only 16% of what was invested globally in clean energy. Although these pack of countries are responsible for 1/3 of global GDP and 2/3 of world population. So there's really a huge gap in access to finance. Although this financement could go to already mature technologies, as we've seen here, a couple of examples, and so this money wouldn't run the risk of nascent technologies. But if we look to the reasons behind the high cost of capital, this is very interesting for me because as a Brazilian-based person, we'll have really to understand what is at stake in an emerging economy like Brazil. And the first aspect to tackle is really the macroeconomic conditions behind those countries. So unfortunately, we are not still considered as a predictable, reliant, trustworthy, I would say, country, and I would say emerging economies as a whole, because countries differ from one from another. But macroeconomic risks are still responsible for 70 to 80% of the added cost of capital, according to IEA, while sector and project risk are only responsible for the remaining 20 and 30. So if we look to the project developers, at the end of the day, they only are responsible for 20 to 30% of the perceived risk of the project. And so everything we have to do have to be really concentrated in finding ways really to lower the macroeconomic risk, which has to do with currency risk, with sovereign risk, and only a slight part with the corporate risk. So basically, what we should be doing is to make sure that we stand as accountable for predictable, stable, and investable countries. And in addition to that, why is that so important? Because when you look to the pool of resources that can be directed towards some project, there are several funds that do not allow the resources to be invested in below investment grade countries. And whenever you are below investment grade countries, this means that by definition, you will not tackle a certain pool of resources. This puts a lot of effort into convincing the world that we are stable in terms of macroeconomic conditions now, but mainly going forward.
Thank you, Clarissa. Very, very good point. I'd like to question here to Raissa on, you mentioned the importance of the big batteries that we have, the hydro power, and I know it's a little bit of a short term, but as developers of projects here, how do dealing with oversupply and some regulatory aspects here are important to guarantee the success of project development going forward? Okay.
Thank you for the question, Arthur. So I think also following what Clarissa just explained, before all this country risk, I would say it was a way to address it was the auctions. So the federal auctions with long-term PPAs, PPAs indexed to the inflation of the country, and some way they stayed behind these PPAs to ensure that it would be respect until the end of the period of 20 years. Now the Brazilian market changed. We don't have more federal auctions. The drive to increase the renewable capacity in Brazil is the free market now, and it means that now the generator, the investor, the developers, we need to assume also not only the country risks that became bigger in economic perspective, but also the local market risks. So when we are discussing with a consumer, the consumer doesn't want us to accept, for example, the hourly spot price risk. So as a generator, as an investor, we need to provide another we need to provide a solution for the consumer. So the energy to be delivered, it's adapted to the consumer needs and not adapted to my generation profile. And which means we are, as an investor, assuming the country risks, so related already to the return that are requests for this project, and also the market risks that are not at all predictable nowadays. So we still in a model, in a regulatory view, in a model based on a hydrothermal system that it's no more true, and in the future it will be until less the true. And we don't know how, for example, the decentralized generation that it's increasing a lot in Brazil, the high insertion of solar plants will impact in this price in the future. And just as I said before, we have a ways to be more efficient. We have a ways to invest and anticipate this kind of risks. And all this will be it will be important for investors to take a decision to invest in Brazil. So when we see the energy market in Europe, it's predictable. We can predict the price of the energy in the future. We cannot in Brazil. We do that, but we do just because we need to do something. But it's not predictable. We don't know how it will evolve in the future, and the history, it's not reflecting the future. So I think that invest on that in readapt our regulatory framework, understand that it's no more the history and the future, it's different from the past. We need to adapt it. We need the prices depending less on the rain. So now we are living a moment in Brazil with an oversupply. So a lot of rain, the reservoirs are in high levels, and the price are in the floor. But for how long time? 2 years ago, we was in a level of very high prices. Though just for me, it's just a very clear signal that we are taking our decisions. So the signal of the price, it's not giving us the good message to take the decision, considering more medium term, I would say, not a long term, but a medium term vision of planification of the system.
Well, Isabel was mentioning Renato Russo before, and I think that we take here another composer, Brazilian composer, Tom Jobim, not in music, but a statement that power sector, I think Brazil is not for beginners. So the Raissa explained very complex situation, but given the particularly with the hydro, that's our advantage, but also adds a lot of complexity to understanding the system, coping with that, providing 24/7 power. That's what clients want, and your generation profile is not the same. But Marco, coming back to you here, and again on the again with the optics of development, with all this uncertainty, future uncertainty, what do you see as the key challenge and things that should be tackled for Brazil going forward on this journey?
Okay. I think one thing that's very important is this vision of long term, because there will be years of low prices, that's for sure. But that's also the same valid for Europe. So I have clients that they sign, let's say, a contract to buy electricity for 20 years. They know during these 20 years, there will be years that they're calling me, complaining that the prices in the market are very low and they're losing money. In the other years, they will be saving lots of money because they made a long-term commitment. And I think this long-term view, this long-term commitment is the way to address this price volatility in Brazil. In Brazil, if we have wet years, the prices are very low. You have dry years, the prices are very high. But if you make a long-term commitment, then you are safe. You'll be years above, you'll be years below, but you remain safe. And then one thing that I would like to highlight is that this investment in renewables or this commitment to renewable in Brazil is a private sector thing. So you are not exposed to so much regulatory risk or policies from the government. You are a bit isolated from what's going on in Brasilia because it's a commitment between companies. And this, of course, there's credit risk, there's other things, but you are not always depending on what's going on in Brasilia. And this is a good thing. The other issue we have is that, well, Brazil is huge. We still have Roraima, I think, that's isolated from the grid in Brazil. So there's still lots of do in transmission lines and integrating the different regions, also to be able to bring power from where the power is generated to where the demand is. We have today lots of wind power installed in the northeast, while most of the demand is in the southeast, and there's not enough capacity in that line. So this is one of the challenges that need to be tackled, and at the same time is an investment opportunity.
Great, thanks, Marco. Again, here we're talking to investors. Okay, so this is the objective of the Brazil Climate Summit and objective of the panel. What do you think things that the investor should be watching closely when we talk about Brazilian renewables, and why? Okay, so I think I'll start more on a general perspective with Clarissa on what's your bet on what we should be watching for the future?
So I believe that investors should really pay attention to the evolving of regulation in Brazil when it comes to the several low carbon, I would say, technologies. So there's a lot going on now. You look to the one bill which is called the Fuel of the Future bill, but it tackles, you know, mandates on biodiesel, on biomethane, on advanced biofuels. So everything that has to do with these yet to be proven low carbon technologies that can decarbonize not only the power, but advance the decarbonization of transportation and also industry. So pay close attention. And I forgot to mention maybe one of the most, I would say, exciting one, which has to do with sustainable aviation fuel. So the first thing to do is try to monitor the advancement of different regulation and understand it. I didn't mention the regulation about green hydrogen, but it is also to be approved very soon. The regulation about offshore wind, which is also an area of high potential in Brazil. And you might, question, but why would anyone look to offshore wind if you are so successful in onshore wind and solar, for instance, and offshore it's much more expensive? Because we have to look now to be prepared in 7 years' time. And again, Brazil has to deliver on its promises. And the second thing I would really observe is the extent to which Brazil is able to integrate global value chains when it comes to power, but mainly to energy, because we will not really deliver our full potential if we look only to our own domestic market. We have to be more integrated. We are already an exporter, but we can be an exporter of other value-added products, such as green products. So that's the way, at least I believe, that we should aspire, and we should invite investors to come to Brazil. So to integrate global value chains, such as green steel, green manufacturing, green chemicals, pulp and paper, and whatever can be, added to our very competitive energy that will add value to those green value chains that are being developed elsewhere. So that's what I would encourage investors to look at.
Thank you, Clarissa. And when we talk about the regulation and about the legislation, it's one of the key challenges also that you have is that when you see a project of law in Brazil, it doesn't mean necessarily that it will be addressing that issue. Okay, we have this famous jabuti, which is like turtle. So
not to be translated, right? Very difficult to be translated.
It's a difficult concept to explain, but I think there are several different. I think particularly the power sector became a sector of rent seekers. So everybody trying to get an amendment to the project, not related to its scope. And anyway, but this is something very important. I cannot leave here to mention about that. But Marco, over to you. And I think you raised a very important, very interesting aspects of the certification and those things on the sector. But also you mentioned the robustness of the sector. How do you see the robustness of the power system, the power grid, on this perspective also that you're providing here? What do you think are the most important areas to watch for going further?
Well, I think there's two very important areas for investment. One is transmission, to better integrate the whole of Brazil, so we don't have to waste electricity. Good renewable electricity is being wasted today when there's too much wind in the northeast and there's not enough capacity to bring it to the south. And the investment in transmission lines is a very easy, let's say, on the rentability. You don't have much surprises. It's a very stable returns on investment. So it's quite one easy to be taken. And the other one, there's a large portfolio of projects in Brazil, renewable energy projects in Brazil that were approved a few years ago. And they are the last ones to have some incentives of discount in the transmission lines. And the moment is now to realize and to build, to invest in these new energy, renewable energy projects that are already fully permitted. They don't have a risk of getting the permits, getting the approvals. They are already ready to be built. And this is a limited window to build this project. So I think that's a very important thing, because In the future, it will be more expensive. So the time to do something there is now. And as you mentioned before, talking about agriculture, so in Brazil, you can have 2 harvests in a year. If you install the same wind turbine in Germany, you take this wind turbine and install in Germany, it also generates 3 times more power. So in Brazil, because of the wind is much, there's less turbulence, the wind speeds are higher, and they remain a very narrow area. So in Germany, we have lots of very high winds and then very low winds during the year. So if you have the same average, in Germany, I have to put a very small wind turbine because it will not be able to support the strong winds that we have 1 month in the year. And in Brazil, the average is the same, but they can put a huge wind turbine with large blades because the average is very narrow. There's a very narrow path. And I used to joke with the wind turbine makers that in Brazil, we don't even need to turn the wind turbine, because if you install it in Northeast, there's only wind from that direction. The whole year, for 20 years, there's one direction. And in Germany, you need lots of systems to turn the wind turbine every day. There's different directions of wind, making it much more complex, much more expensive. So Brazil, we have a huge opportunity to still develop more transmission lines and more renewable capacity. And I'm a firm believer that there will be a shortage of energy in a few years' time because of all these applications. We'll be talking about that. You'll be talking about that in the next session about green hydrogen. So why to make green hydrogen in Europe if I can take the same wind turbine, put in Brazil, and generate three times more hydrogen? So I think it's a great moment to look in Brazil for investment opportunities in renewables, in transmission lines, and I believe also in the green hydrogen.
Marco, just one because you raised the issue of the old hydropower plants, okay? So they are already there, they're established, they are completely renewable. There are some challenges in building new hydro, but I think the ones that are there. And so do you think repowering them would make them certificate, or is it easy to change the certificate criteria to allow that? Because it's difficult to understand. Why can't you certify that as completely renewable power? No?
Yes, and this is an issue we have also in Europe. In Europe, we have in Norway lots of old hydro. But then many companies, they want to have the RE100 certification. And this certification requires you to use power from a plant that is less of 15 years old. So these old plants in Brazil, they will simply not make the cut unless they are fully repowered or there are new investments. But the goal of the RE100 is not to simply certify who is using 100% of renewable energy, but is to support change. And we cannot have change with 60 years old power plants. We need new capacity. We need new investment in renewable energies. And this is what is a big commitment for companies to be RE100 compliant. And it really requires to source the power from new power plants less than 15 years old. This is right now a big topic in Germany, in Europe, because this just started this year, 2024. Until last year, you could still source green energy from Norway, from this old hydro, and it would be fine. You'd be compliant. From this year onward, not anymore. So then lots of companies, lots of my clients are looking for new renewable capacity to firm long-term contracts and secure this renewable energy that meets this higher requirement.
That's a good topic for advisor. Raissa, I think you mentioned the batteries as of the system as a whole, but also new opportunities in batteries. So how do you see that in a long-term perspective for complementing the system in Brazil?
Okay, so regarding the batteries, I think it's really related to the increase of non-dispatchable sources in the grid. In Brazil, we have, I think, the big potential of Brazil. It's that we have a lot of potential yet to increase. So we have a lot of renewable energy to put in the grid in the future, and it will change how the system respond to this generation. So batteries, I would say not only batteries, but batteries, hybrid projects also are solutions that we need to think now. And for sure will have an important place in the energy matrix in Brazil. We don't have yet a real I would say, capacity market in Brazil. So we have the capacity auctions that batteries could not participate this year. This is, yeah, they might be. We are working to add it in the auction, but it's something we need to request. It's not. It does not make sense. But yeah, it's a potential for that. Batteries with solar or wind projects could avoid a lot of problems of hourly prices in the future, making this more predictable. For example, the prices. And just to give you a view on the potential of renewable in Brazil. When we talk about offshore winds, for example, that is something also that is under discussion in the Congress. We have estimated 800 gigawatts of potential, and today only for offshore. We're not talking about onshore and solar. That it's even more. While in Brazil today has 200 gigawatts of total installed capacity. So we have a lot of capacity of potential of renewables in the country, much more than we could have of demand, even in the future. So what I see as important to have in mind, as just said also before by Marco and Clarissa, is our potential to export this energy, to export renewable solutions, to help other countries using our potential, and batteries will be part of the solution, especially when we need to demonstrate that this, we know that our requirements for hydrogen, for example, to have a continuous delivery of energy, and the batteries associated for these renewables projects seems to be a very good solution for that. So globally, I would say that it need to be part of the solutions to have to explore as much as we can our renewable potential in Brazil.
Great, and we had the Sigma lithium and things like that. I think the supply chain also is being considered, so it's very much connected. Well, I'd like first to thank the speakers here, because I think we deliver on time. Still, I would like to have time for one last minute, and I think avoiding the cliché here that Brazil will always be the country of the future. I think why Brazil is already a good place to invest in renewables.
I think quality of resource, it's for sure the main point. So the basic needs, we have it yet. We don't need to create. It's there. We need just to adjust the regulation, adjust the way we use our reservoirs, but everything is there. To be simple and fast, I think this is the main point.
I think that in addition to what's been said by Raissa and Marco, we have the right people, and people is a very scarce resource. And I always, encourage ourselves to look at our potential, because we are we do have well-educated people, we have motivated people, talented people. So, and to the students that are only spending a couple of years here, I would definitely encourage them to go back to Brazil and to make all the difference that you, young generation, can do it.
Yeah, I like what Walter said before. So the time to do things is now. So I think it's very nice to have these targets for 2030, 2050, but the time to make action is now. And there are really great opportunities in Brazil. So every investor in renewable energy, in transmission lines, in the whole chain of production should be looking at Brazil. Also because many markets, they are trying to move away from China or at least reduce the dependence from one country. And Brazil is a democracy. So Brazil could be a very reliable partner for a long time to be included in the global supply chain and replace some of the non-democratic countries that are today dominating some supply chains. So the moment is now.
Well, I'd like to thank a lot Raissa, Clarissa, Marco for the inputs here, preparation for the session. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay.
Thank you.